All right, I'm going to do a review and kind of a little analysis and breakdown for you guys who want more information about the vertical diet by Stan Efferding. I'm going to try my best to be as kind of concise as possible, and just forgive me for the way it's kind of this video is put together. I'm just going to be basically doing a basic screen recording. I have some snapshots from the actual document or book, however you want to call it, because it really isn't really a book. I'll kind of get into that. It's really, as it says here, program notes, if anything. As a whole, I'll just say this before I forget. I think it's a good book, has a lot of good information in it. Not really saying anything negative about the book. If there's anything negative, then I'll kind of touch on. It's more so this price tag. So I actually got this book. I'll call it a book now. It's not really a book if you actually looked at it. I got this from somebody at the gym who purchased it and shared it with me. And I can see maybe that's why this price tag is so high. People are going to be circulating this. But it is $100. I was shocked to kind of see this was the price for the book, and I think there's a limited number of downloads. Let's just say that, so it's not like this is getting circulated that much. Obviously, people can copy and paste this stuff and send it out, but there's many people put ebooks out that are fractional the price, have a lot more information in there. But again, this is he can charge what he wants, and if people are getting results on this, then it would be worth $100. And I think if I was just a little shocked by the $100. I guess that's all I'll say about that. The actual content of the book and the way it's laid out is almost kind of not really in a book fashion. There's not chapters at all. It's pretty much like a big document. I don't know how many pages. Maybe doesn't seem like that many. You can get through this whole thing in maybe 15 minutes. And again, if you really delved into it and you click on his links of where he puts the research stuff and blogs and some of it. I mean, I won't go into that too much, but there's a lot of varieties of ways he kind of inserts the different research stuff into this document. It's laid out in kind of like bullet point fashion with the stuff that he kind of drives home. And again, I apologize if I'm talking fast. I just want to get as much information in as short time as possible. So it is pricey. That's up to you guys to actually pay that stuff, to pay that price. I would say if you've read a lot of nutritional, I would just say stuff in general, from a lot of different camps and diet archetypes, you're going to see a lot of parallels and some crossovers. You can see he's kind of getting some influence from somewhere. I would say as a whole, as I looked at this document and kind of got more familiar with the diet, I would say it really is, to me, it's a combination of obviously typical bodybuilding type of nutrition, aspects of paleo, specifically, the stressing avoidance of grains from one's diet. So I said that there's an element of that. Also some references like Price Pottenger Foundation. I shouldn't say that. Weston A. Price Foundation, which is like kind of the originators of paleo in a sense. So some of that. And the other big group is Ray Peat. And if you guys aren't familiar with Ray Peat, he's a huge kind of underground cult nutritional following. He's a famous physiologist and has a lot of, I'll just say, quote unquote radical ideas when it comes to nutrition, and you can definitely see his influences. And Stan has references to Ray Peat ideologies. But I'll just say this too: that there's a lot of stuff that Ray Peat, if you look into what Ray Peat does, really contradicts some of the things that Stan gets into. And for the sake of the time, I won't really get into that. If I see something, I'll point it out. But I won't really go through this so much, other than the sense this is typical kind of diet marketing. In the way this book is laid out, or the ad is laid out, and that's not knocking him at all whatsoever. To actually jump to the nuts and bolts of this, if I look at, this image, if you Google search the vertical diet, you've probably seen this image. This really does encapsulate pretty well what this diet is all about. The foundation is pretty much red meat and white rice. More on the leaner side of the red meats, I'd say. And for that reason, more so because red meat, again, it's known to be obviously high in heme iron, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, creatine, healthier fats. So he's saying, as a nutrient-dense source of protein and nutrition, this would be a more sounder option. And he's saying white rice, even though he demonizes grains throughout the book, he says, this is the more easier to digest grain or starch. That's going to, help you kind of ease digestion and make things essentially a little better, easier to digest. And that's a big kind of crux of the book, really, is better digestion through these recommendations. Also by eating the kind of same groupings of food every day, your body gets used to digesting the same groups of foods. And that's, people have been saying that for a number of years. The other aspect is things like stimulating the metabolism through proper micronutrients you're putting into your body, things that are stimulating thyroid, obviously in turn stimulating metabolism. And that aspect is really coming from, again, the Ray Peat side that I saw from him. So these being your foundation, things that are, I think I should say, the reason he's also recommending these sources are these are also minerals that most people are deficient in. So other than some big minerals, magnesium, zinc, potassium being something else everyone's deficient in. He stresses calcium, although we can talk about calcium being an issue. But calcium is definitely something you see from Ray Peat. Ray Peat is this guy right here, right? You see if you type in Ray Peat, you'll find a lot of stuff about him, and again, you'll go down a whole rabbit hole of what he's into. But in a really quick elevator pitch, what he's about, he's really about stimulating metabolism, thyroid, through the means of using things like simple sugar in the form of fructose, also even just throwing in regular table sugar into certain things. Lactose, really big promoter of milk. He's not really a big promoter of red meat because he's not really a big promoter of he basically tells people to watch out for iron and things like that. So I know I'm going crazy fast. I'm just giving you guys a blitz of information here to make this video short and informative. But this is where he's, I think, stand efforting is getting things like heavy emphasis on potassium, heavy emphasis on iodine. Again, Ray Peat talks about that. He recommends having that 4-ounce shot of cranberry juice 2 times a day to get your source of iodine. The fats pretty much coming from saturated fats. Obviously, grass-fed butter's up there. The natural fats, recurring fats in meat. Salmon, getting some of those omega-3 fatty acids. Definitely telling us to avoid polyunsaturated fatty acids. Many have said is kind of not really health promoting. So those are things like any kind of vegetable oil. Again, it's also a Ray Peat thing, paleo thing. Many people have been saying that. Getting a good source of eggs every day, a few eggs or 4 eggs every day for a source of choline, K2, 2 things that are some vitamins and minerals that we're deficient in. He recommends having a whole carrot a day, so really or a handful of little baby carrots. Having iodized sea salt or sodium. He recommends having a good amount of sodium as long as it's in balance and regulating potassium levels, and that's a big thing. Has been an issue. Many people discuss that if sodium's too high and potassium's low, that's really an issue. You want to have those in balance, so definitely getting enough potassium, which is why you see him recommending having a potato or 2 a day to add to your total source of potassium. Oranges and orange juice, you see him talk about that. Again, has potassium, vitamin C, simple sugars, things like that. That really summarizes this. And the chicken stock is more about gut health. He talks about that a little bit. I have some little notes here. I think for the most part, I covered most of this as far as some of the important things. He talks about having basically a gram per pound of body weight in protein, roughly 20 to 40 grams per meal. Every 3 to 4 hours. He's definitely on the more multi-meal frequency type of thing. My personal just queuing in here is it really, I think if you're having steak that much, I mean, not saying steak is hard to, I mean, it's just longer to digest like most meats. So for me, if I eat 3 or 4 hours of steak, obviously it's depending on the person, the amount I'm actually consuming. To me, that's going to be kind of, I would need a little more time to digest steak that many times a day, but that's just me. Talked about fats, more or less saturated fats, fats from animal products, what he's recommending. He recommends to avoid urea FODMAPs, which is why you see these collection of fruits and vegetables, and basically the idea that things like heavy, dense vegetables and fruits, things that have high in FODMAPs, you can look up FODMAPs, basically have just cause gas bloating and intestinal distress in some people. That's not always the case. Again, a lot of this you can take with a grain of salt because obviously there's certain people out there, you might be one of them, who consumes a regular vegetable like broccoli or whatever and has no problems whatsoever. But that's something. Obviously promoting cholesterol through animal products. He's not really a fan of coffee or caffeine as much. He recommends getting regular blood tests basically to check for levels, obviously specifically vitamin D, which I haven't said already, he stresses a lot as being very important. You can get that through some of these foods. Obviously, sunlight would be best. He's not big on supplements. This is actually from the book. Here's a supplement checklist he recommends if deems necessary. So multivitamin, vitamin D, B complex, and some sort of calcium, magnesium, zinc supplement as needed. post-workout. This is like a post-workout drink. I won't read this, but basically it's a high sugar concoction, a little bit of caffeine to help kind of help store that excess sugars into glycogen for after a workout. He recommends having this maybe directly after a workout session, then waiting about 30 minutes before you have your protein source. Here is his kind of foundational pyramid of kind of, again, this is in the book, of what he recommends is kind of like how you can base your day around or your week around these kind of foundations. All right, I'm going to click over this for the sake of time. And then this is a nice handy tool he has, just a daily tracker spreadsheet, something where you can just kind of put a tally next to this little checklist. So if something's off, again, your diet, your health-wise, he's saying you can go back to this checklist and see maybe where you're off in some way. If I didn't get to something, the two big things I didn't talk about, obviously he stresses sleep being as important. He stresses his 10-minute walks after every meal, recommending that. I think overall, I think this is just a great book in the sense that it is exposing people to some things that are of concern, such are those minerals and vitamins that are low in most people. He exposes people to this guy if you're not, and that might be a good thing or a bad thing. I'll just leave it at that, because I went down a repeat rabbit hole many years ago. As I'm thinking about it, some things that are radical with Ray Peat, top of my head, he recommends. He's a promoter of just ice cream, Haagen-Dazs ice cream. And that's the whole reason why he says Haagen-Dazs has low carrageenan and no additives. But basically, big on dairy, dairy sugar, big on salt, also obviously iodine, things like that. So that might be interesting to look at. So I think the book is definitely can be worth it if you get results. I think it was the only critical thing I have with it would be the price tag with the amount of content you're getting in there. But again, if you've never heard this stuff before, maybe that would be worth your time and just trial and error finding this stuff. Otherwise, I think the book could work for you. We're all keeping in mind here, right? Obviously, I didn't even want to jump into this, but obviously the fact that some people look at Saneferdine, who's obviously and admits to using substances to get to his size. I'm not knocking that in any way, shape, or form. In fact, he's recommending you get tests to check for these things. But the way someone's going to digest and utilize these nutrients in a diet is going to be different to who you are. So my overall point of saying this is there's people out there who look at Saneferdine and expect to get his results just from eating this certain diet. That's one thing, but overall, I'd say my diet's kind of similar to this to begin with, and yours might be as well. I think those are all important things to kind of consider. I think this spreadsheet is a great way of looking at things. I think it's just an overall good template to follow nutritionally if you're looking at something to be interested in, or at the very least kind of spark your interest into looking at other areas. So that's it. If you guys have any more specific questions, I could ramble on forever in more detail about this and commentary about this, but I'm really trying to keep this short and sweet. So any other questions, definitely feel free to let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks.